For those of you who don't know me, my name's Michael. I'm a psychotherapist in private practice here in the East Bay. As was already mentioned, I'm a former high school counselor for about 6 years at an independent school here also in the East Bay. I founded an organization called Practical Help for Parents, which is an online organization which attempts to give parents an idea of what resources are available in and around the Bay Area, and to try and be a little bit of a one-stop shop for disseminating and also making sense of the research on parents and teens. I'd like to spend some of our brief time together doing a couple of things. One, telling you a little bit about why I wrote the book and why I wrote it in the way that I did. Next, to try and give you a sense of the content and the structure in the book and letting you hear some highlights. And then we'll have some questions and discussions. And finally, we'll participate, if you like, in the arcane ritual of signing books or signing whatever you like. So why did I do such a stupid thing as writing another book about parenting teens? It was really because I wanted a book that I would have read or would have wanted to read when my child was growing up, when my child was a teenager. There were books about parenting teens, most notably Mike Riera's book, and that was Mike's book on common sense for parents of teenagers was really the book that I discovered. I discovered both Mike and the book, and it was really a godsend because it was really the first book where I got to read about teenagers in their natural habitat and started reading about what I thought was kind of crazy or problematic behavior, and Mike would explain it in a way that really made sense and would make sense from the teenager's perspective as well as from the adult perspective. So that was really helpful for me. But for me, I have a weakness, maybe because of my own father, for clinical research and also for being something of a research geek. And I really wanted to be able to take material that was strong and solid about adolescence, but that also had a backup of, what's the science say about what adolescents are doing and why adolescents are doing it. So to me, the challenge is, well, how do you bring together the science part of it, where you don't bore people completely to death, where it's meaningful, and how do you make sense of it for parents in a way that they can actually go home and use? And that book didn't really exist in a certain way for me. So that's the book I wanted to write. So back to the points of tension. Being case specific, I think, comes out of necessity, and it means not being able to quickly diagnose or quickly deliver information. It requires time, it requires proximity, it requires educated guessing, it requires testing, data gathering, observation, data analysis, trying things out, repeating the process, honing in on an answer, trying again. That's the approximating that I allude to in the title. And in my view, that's really what the book is about, and I think an effective approach to working with adolescents, and that is having them close to you and them feeling you approximating an answer. The book is all about, it's not about coming up with the perfect strategy for your child. It's about being close enough to your child that they can actually feel you engaged in an ongoing way with the wish to approximate an answer that's based on them. And to put a fine point on it, for your child, that reads as love. But if I'd been in therapy at 18, I would have been talking about the world that we were moving into. At that time, it would have been fears of living in a nuclear world and how it was that you could even make a commitment given how tenuous things are. But our kids' eyes are wide open. They are seeing the world that we're creating for them and the world that we're leaving for them. They see the mess, they see the lying, they see the corruption, they see what the banks are doing, they see all of it. And they might look like they're just playing video games, but they're watching all of it, and they're watching the way we respond to all of it. So to me, it becomes a crucial question, which is, how do you promote this value of fidelity? How do we keep our kids engaged in a world that they know is extremely imperfect? If there's no generic teenager, and there's no generic best parenting style or way of working with every teenager, what are you supposed to do? Well, the book is an answer to that, which is try and be an approximate parent. What's that about? In general, you have to understand the cultural context in which kids are growing up. You have to know something about your teenager's biology and their biography. You have to do lots of careful observation, experimentation, data collection, and theory making about your particular child. And doing those things makes you an approximate parent. And approximation is not only good enough, I think it's very effective and a rewarding way to be with your child. And it follows after Kurt Lewin's famous dictum that there's nothing so useful as a good theory. So I'd like to help us all be really good theory makers, because as I said, when we're close to our children and trying to make theories about who they are and what they feel and what they believe, that feels like love to them. So not long ago, a trend started on YouTube, the most popular site worldwide for teens who are interacting with online video content. Young girls as young as 9 or 10 began posting homemade videos, posting the same question, "Am I pretty?" This trend was followed by an increase in related video postings with preteen and teen girls asking, "Am I ugly?" Have you seen these videos? Aided by a computer, usually located in the bedroom, a webcam, a minimal digital media skills with video uploading, the girls tell their stories. "I'm called ugly at school. Leave me comments and let me know whether you think I'm pretty or not." Some young girls try to cajole their imagined audiences, providing nice pictures of themselves, taking down their hair, smiling the best smile they can muster, and boy, do they get comments. Most of them are horrific. "Not even a paper bag would work," writes one of the more vitriolic commenters. "You're a fat, ugly pig. You make me throw up," writes another one who chose not to hold anything back. Not all of the comments are mean or negative, though. Some provide the self-esteem or confidence-boosting feedback that these girls long for, telling them they're, quote, truly beautiful or gorgeous just the way they are. Some comments, probably from worried parents, warn the girls to stop the activity altogether, fearing the activity will lead to depression and suicide. There's so much about that phenomena that repeats and recapitulates and reinforces other adolescent and adult experiences. First of all, this woman was engaging in what's called a kind of identity play online, which involved the deliberate misrepresentation of her age and the purpose of her activity. For Sophia, she's 21 years old, she's in the process too of formulating and implementing her own online values and ethics. And these evidently include lying and misrepresentation in an experiment that does not include the consent of her subjects. I'm pretty sure the Human Subjects Review Committee at most colleges and universities would pause before they approve Sophia's project. The Am I Pretty videos echo the proliferation of hot or not websites, photos and videos in the 1990s which showed mostly women in all states of dress and undress asking to be rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Little quizzes and tests still abound on sites like Facebook, providing some kind of rating of the overall degree of hotness, sexiness, or interestingness. And like much of the online behavior, people say and do things they would never do in real life, as strangers leave horribly severe feedback for these young people, using the medium to get an always needed boost of self-confidence and self-esteem. However shocking this phenomena should not be surprising if you consider the characteristics of teens, the characteristics of digital media, and what happens when you combine the two. I guess the other thing, which is sort of a tip I could give you is, I also mentioned in the book, any intervention you make with your child is not going to be any better than your neurological state at the time of the intervention. Okay, so what that means is you could have exactly the right intervention on paper, and it could just be perfect, like therapist approved, but if you're in a state of distress when you implement that intervention, what your child will feel is your distress. And that's what's going to read most. Or you could come up with the most really useless answer for an intervention, but if it's done with a sense of engagement and neurological calmness, what your child will get from that is, well, I might be going through something really, really difficult right now, but in my bones and in my mom's bones, things feel okay. So I think things are gonna be okay. So I would say one of the best things you can do to prepare for oncoming adolescence is to take very, very good care of yourself, so that as your child challenges you, you have a slightly higher chance of being in a decent neurological state. And it's a little funny, but it's very true. There are lots of 13-year-olds online. There are lots of 9-year-olds on Facebook, but the parent has to go and sign them on, or you have to lie about your age. That's hard to do. But there's a bigger implication of having young children on Facebook, and that is that they're going to be behaviorally targeted, and what those kids are doing online is going to be used to determine selling strategies to you and your children. So anyway, that's as an aside, that's already going on. And that's talked about in the book if you want to get more depressed. So yes, parents do that. Yes, it does, depending on the social location, it does make those kids on the outside. And that's a huge source of tension for them, because when kids enter adolescence, it's not all about their peers. It's still about their parents to some degree, but it's really hard to not be able to do the things that most of your peers are doing. And kids will say, like, they don't get invited to parties, they don't get called up if they're not allowed to use social media. Your other question about, is it possible to have a good relationship while you're setting boundaries? I'll say with some, not too tongue-in-cheek, it's not possible to have a relationship with your kids unless you're setting boundaries with them.